Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 200 Years of Hamilton County in 15 minutes. Hopefully. A captivating historical podcast that takes you on a time-traveling journey through the remarkable stories, extraordinary individuals, and significant locations that have shaped the fascinating county of Hamilton County in Indiana. I'm your host, Adam Grubb, and alongside me is the talented storyteller, David Heighway. With each episode here, we're going to dive deep into the rich tapestry of Hamilton County's past, uncovering hidden gems, untold tales that span 2 centuries. From the founding pioneers who carved out their livelihoods in this land to the monumental events that have left an indelible mark on the history. We'll leave no stone unturned. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a curious local, or simply seeking to uncover the hidden gems of Hamilton County, this podcast is your ticket to an unforgettable journey through time. Get ready to immerse yourself in captivating narratives, intriguing anecdotes, and surprising revelations, David, all in bite-sized episodes designed to fit into your busy schedule. Buckle up. This is 200 Years of Hamilton County in 15 minutes. David, the history of the arts in Hamilton County is one of those that isn't talked about a lot. Arts is not one of the things that Noblesville, Carmel, Fishers is really known for, except for the last 50 years, there's been a little bit more of an uptick in that. But you know that over 200 years, arts have been a major impact in Hamilton County. Tell me about the history of the arts and the roots of the arts in Hamilton County.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Yeah, basically it's even farther back than 200 years because, of course, you have the Native Americans in the area with making pottery and different things like that. So in a sense, you can push it back even farther than that. But primarily, when you're talking about what people usually consider performing arts, visual arts, that sort of thing there, that really kind of starts with the first settlers, including literally a gentleman by the name of Amos Chapman, who came in with the very first settlers playing his fife. So in a sense, he's sort of our first artist there. And what it was is that was kind of the beginning. Obviously, the pioneers are very, very concerned with survival. So the arts is not a big part of it. But literally by the 1840s, they're starting to have traveling groups coming in, different things like that. There are routes that you can get in, whether it's circuses in the 1840s, working up to things like that. The railroad comes in the 1850s, and all of a sudden you're starting to have real arts, performers and artists and different things like that.
Now, the first circus in the 1840s here in Hamilton County, they came in, they found this area, and they said, this is where we want to set up shop for a little bit. Were they here for a long time? Was it well received? Are there still remnants of the circus that are around Hamilton County today?
It's interesting because actually they were here briefly. I mean, when you're traveling literally through uncut wilderness, it's tough to pull a whole circus wagon. But they were here. They actually did some theatrical performances along with your standard acrobats and different things like that. So that was in about 1847. Once the railroad came in, it obviously became easier for them to come in here. And as a matter of fact, not only did you have circuses in the 1840s, but by the 1860s, you had circuses that actually did winter over here in Hamilton County, up at Strawtown. They actually would stay over the winter and work on their equipment. And then all the way up, of course, into the turn of the century when there's a major form of things there. We also had several people from Hamilton County that performed in the circuses, including notably Frank Stark. Frank Stark was a gentleman from here in Noblesville, and he was an acrobat, and he claimed to be the first person to turn a triple somersault in the United States. And apparently in 1863, he was trying to prove it down in Indianapolis and only made like 2.5 turns, and that's why he's down at Riverside Cemetery today.
Wow, what a dark turn to Mr. Stark. So he was one of the first acrobats to perform, or at least tell people you could perform a stunt, and then tried to perform said stunt and passed away in the process.
Unfortunately.
Well, my hat's off to Mr. Stark for at least the attempt, his final attempt of life. Mm-hmm. The first theater was here in 1869 in Hamilton County.
Yes.
That's the first movie theater. Is this motion picture? Is this silent films, obviously? What was the theater itself?
Actually, what's great is it's still here. The building that's now the coffee shop here in Noblesville, the Noble Coffee and Tea Building, the 3rd floor, well, the building was literally called City Hall, but it wasn't for government. It was literally built as a performance venue in 1869 because that was a sign of a growing city, that you actually had the leisure to go ahead and create this thing for traveling theatrical troops. Like the circuses we talked about, there would also be just regular troops that would come around and do Shakespeare and Uncle Tom's Cabin and various other things like that. So the 3rd floor of that was actually the performance hall for probably about 20 years. So it's
now, at that time, how many people were in Hamilton County?
1860s. Oh dear, I'd have to check the thing.
It wasn't. It was thousands.
Oh yes,
right. It was a very minuscule, small number. How did those performances, those theaters, and that type of traveling art, how did it survive, and did it survive here for a long period of time?
It survived mainly because people were desperate. There was literally nothing else. You would read in the newspaper how everybody would get together for an evening of just singing at somebody's house with one person playing a violin. This was it. You know, there was no internet, there was no television, there were no movies or anything like that. So as a result, having this semi-professional hall, having the semi-professional venue, meant that you were attracting people who could do slightly better versions of this. You had speakers. You had James Whitcomb Riley come in and speak there. Of course, the famous poet. He did onstage versions of his plays, and people were tremendously excited to see that. So now it was, within about 20 years, it was viewed as inadequate as much as anything else. That's really why they stopped using it. And they started to build larger and larger venues, eventually with the Wild Opera House that was downtown for many, many years. So
now Carmel today has a very thriving and really spectacular arts and design district. And arts is very important to a lot of the residents in Carmel and those in Hamilton County who go there. Where did the shift happen? And how long ago did that shift happen over these last 200 years from the arts really kind of taking hold into Carmel?
That's really the post-1950s. It's the suburban boom when you have a crowd that's really looking for that sort of thing. Carmel had one of the last movie theaters in the county. So, that was when the shift kind of happened. It's interesting. Carmel, like Westfield, was held back from the arts early on because of a large Quaker population. And the Quakers just aren't into that sort of thing. But eventually, of course, as the population became dissipated, lots of other people moved in and had more interest in things like that. The thing is, though, while Westfield had a theater at one point in time, it was never really a major part of the way it was in Noblesville, the way it was up in Sheridan. Sheridan had an opera house. Arcadia had an opera house, different things like that. Carmel never really had an opera house per se. Now, of course, like you say, in the 1950s, that changed, and now that is where this huge core of very, very serious art is now.
Now, the artists that are notable, you mentioned a few of them that came through town and have been in this area for a short stint or long stint, some that passed away tragically trying to do a somersault. The notable artists, Hamilton County School of Illustrators, you have the Hamilton County Artists Association. There's a lot of notables that have come through here. Tell us about them.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I just did a blog post about the most famous person in Hamilton County.
Was it me?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, you're brand new, so, you know.
Maybe in 200 years.
You know, give it some time. Actually, it is a fairly recent person, though. It's Norman Norell, who was a famous fashion designer in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s. And he is sort of an A-lister's A-list, because he designed for Jackie Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe and Judy Garland and Lauren Bacall and different things like that. And was, like I said, in the 50s and 60s, he was absolutely huge. He was internationally known. So in a sense, he's working from the whole arts environment himself, and actually he got his start as a theater designer. He was very interested in doing costumes for theaters. So you had that sort of creation right there. But there were a lot of other people around the county that achieved a certain amount of fame. You had the Hoosier Hotshots up in Arcadia, a musical comedy group, sort of the Weird Al Yankovic of the 1930s. And then, of course, you had Lucky Teeter here in Noblesville. It's not usually what you would consider arts, but he was an entertainer. He was a stunt driver in the 1930s over in the United States, various parts there. Born and raised here, had a house here. There is actually film of him in 1936 doing one of his stunt demonstrations on Connor Street next to the courthouse. He said he was terrified because literally the crowd is right there on the sidewalks as he's leaping cars over other cars and running through walls of fire and doing things like that.
And this is in the 1930s. That wasn't necessarily perfected yet from a safety perspective, I would assume.
Yeah, well, considering he was killed in 1942 when a stunt went wrong,
David, you bring the joy to these artists. I'm seeing a trend here of those that are trying to do amazing things back in the day. You're listening to and watching the 200 Years of Hamilton County in 15 minutes. David Heighway, I'm Adam Grubb. David, the community theater groups and this really kind of feeling of community and arts has been more and more important over the last several decades, but it was rooted here in all types of acts, all types of people. How did it, in your opinion, seeing the history, how did it stay here, and why did it not move closer to Indianapolis and just kind of come out and leave the Hamilton County area? Why the love for the arts here in Hamilton County over the last 200 years?
Well, it's a chance for people to do self-expression. That's as much as anything else. That's why you have community theater. Let's be honest, community theater, a lot of it is because somebody wants to act more than anything else. And self-expression is a huge part of that. Whether it's visual artists like painters and illustrators, and once again, that's the kind of thing they're trying to do their own form of expression, musicians, dancers, all this kind of stuff. It is really, as much as anything else, it's a chance for somebody to say, hey, look at what I can do, and I really want to do it here. So, and that was never really discouraged here. There are some places that have sort of maybe a more pragmatic view or something like that. But here it was kind of like, no, it's very cool if you want to go ahead and do this sort of thing. They prefer you make some money, but at the same time, they have no problem with the idea that you're going to be doing painting or go on stage or something like that. That tends to be not a big issue.
David, it's now time for Did You Know? Did you know? I know you do. Did you know, listener, the first symphony orchestra in Carmel was started in 1925. David, tell me the story.
Alrighty. Once again, we were talking about how people like self-expression, like be able to do the arts and things like that. And in the 1920s, a group of people in Carmel wanted to organize a proper orchestra, more than just a town band, but a proper orchestra. One of the key people in that was Frederick Hunt. He had graduated from Carmel High School, worked at the local newspaper, and actually eventually became interested in being a composer. The Carmel Symphony in 1925 lasted only about 2 years, and that's why we have a different Carmel Symphony Orchestra today. But Hunt went on to actually the Eastman School of Music in New York and worked with people like Howard Hanson and Roy Harris, and became actually a composer in his own right. And he was actually, it's interesting, he died in 1967. But he was sort of forgotten at the time. And one of the things I do as a historian is try and find lost persons, as it were. And so for the last year or so, I've been going back and putting his life back together, finding his music, finding music that should be attributed to him that maybe isn't, or something like that. So it's been kind of an interesting trip with him.
All right, it's Fun Facts segment. These are fun facts, and these are all true. And these are coming from you, David, so we know that they are factually sound. This is Fun Facts of Hamilton County, 200 years. The largest increase in the county population happened between 1830 and 1840, when it rose from 1,705 to 9,855 people, an increase of 478% in just 10 years. I'm sure there's a massive story behind the reason for that. Number two, the first known baseball team was organized in Noblesville in 1868 and was named the Quick Steps. And number three, Fun Facts of Hamilton County. Local people in Sheridan produced a feature-length film with musical accompaniment in 1919 and titled it The Dairy Queen. Fun Facts of Hamilton County. I'm Adam Grubb. That's David Heighway. This has been 200 years of Hamilton County history. Next episode, we talk about the diversity of Hamilton County, and we look forward to that at that point. David, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.